Here we go. We are recording. I'm going to go into, hopefully my Schoology account's going to let me in. There we go. And look at all of these assignments that I got. Isn't that exciting? Wonderful. Love it. Now, keep in mind, this will work for your students as well. They'll have this up here, and notice it says like overdue. So that was back in August, and then jumping into April, and then May. So it just layers everything right on top of there. And then as a teacher, you see the reminders and then things that are upcoming. So it breaks it out really nicely. Kids obviously aren't gonna, maybe, I don't think they're gonna have these reminders. But the calendar is real nice right there on the main page for them. One more thing that I want to point out is on your activity feed up here, you can go ahead and do some updates. Like you can see Brian Martin sent this out to the high school student body. He sent this one to the high school staff. This one again back to the student body, and you can see, you know, like as these groups are created, you'll be able to use these to leverage this as a great communication piece, reminder piece for students and for your classroom, as well as I know some of you do various kinds of groups. You know, so if you're doing like a girls on the run, or if you're chess club or yearbook like I was, you can create that stuff and it will show up here for those kids that are in that course or in that group. You can also create assignments right here, events, and then there's always your more. We're not really jumping into this whole blog thing. If you want to, like, we'll talk separately. And then over here, you can see that you have a couple other little options. So there is a lot that comes with Schoology, and keep in mind, this is your first year. We get it. We all understand that, and you're not going to be a super proficient user. No, I'm on Zoom.
Happy it came out.
I'll come see you. So we're going to jump into a course. Where's my practice? There it is, my little globe. See, I was looking at, oh, which one is my practice one? But here we go. It's my little globe. And what I want to show today and kind of cover today is going to be under materials, because that's where you can add your folder. That's where you can add your assignment, test and quiz, or assessment. Again, please focus on this teal one. This is the one that has all of the like amped up kinds of types of questions, the dragging and the dropping, the highlighting of text and all that kind of stuff. Come here, do this one. A couple other things that can happen. You can simply add links to files. So if you have PDFs, if you have a link to a website that you want the kids to have, and there's really nothing more than just adding in a link, you can use this. It very simply, if you've got a file, you can use that. Adding a link is the same thing. It's going to give you a spot for a title, like your URL, your title, if you choose to align it to any of your learning objectives. And then again, here are your options that you can have. The one that gets a little bit tricky that you have to just pay attention to is this displaying in Schoology. A lot of teachers really like this idea that it would just show like in this main portion of your screen. And, you know, like with links, if you have a link embedded on a Google slide or you have a link embedded on a Google Doc, it'll take you out to another window. So for younger students, you know, having like 4 or 5 different tabs and expecting them to proficiently be able to navigate through them, some adults struggle with that. Thinking about it as in light of our kids, that can also be a difficult thing. So what Schoology provides is the ability to kind of like showcase it within Schoology. That is ideal. That is wonderful. However, I will say does not always work. So you have to kind of play with this setting. If it doesn't work, like if it doesn't just show up for the kids, there's always going to be that arrow out. It's like a little box with a little arrow that goes out that just navigates them out to another tab. And that's the one that gets kind of like, I love it, but it didn't always work well for me. So sometimes they had to go out and it was fine. Again, published it to the students and then copying to other courses. Same kinds of options that you have for assessments and assignments. The external tool, we really don't deal much with that. And I would not recommend dabbling in this too much in your first year unless you're really adventurous. Another material that I really love is this adding a discussion. And if any of you were, and I know several of you were part of our Innovators Mindset book study, handful of years ago, we heavily use this discussion tool, heavily. And it's really awesome. And you have a lot of control over it. And this is probably one of my favorite pieces to this whole book study that we did. And Robin Baker did it without, because he put the stuff in there, and I was actually really, I was really excited after the fact because I hadn't thought about it until then. But you're going to create a discussion question. So this might be, you know, how are you feeling about the end of the year? Put in blah, 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 whatever you need to. You've got your rich text editors up here. You can add in any of those items here. Give it a due date. You can allow for grading or not allow for grading. I'm going to add in, it's going to be classwork. This is something that I would want students to do during. Again, you've got your the grading period, your factor is numeric, aligned to your standards. Do you want to individually assign it only to certain kids? It's published to the kids. This is the one that Robin turned on, and I didn't know it until after the fact, because as an administrator in that course, it didn't impact me. It only impacted all of the students. So what this does, if you turn this on, and you know it's on because it actually shows, your students will have to respond to your question before they can see anybody else's response. And I had several teachers come up to me, and they were, I think, half joking and half serious. And they were like, what are you doing? Like, I need to be able to read everybody else's response before I respond. And I was like, no. You got to come up with your own and then respond. And then you could see. So it provided like, it was scary. And I personally, like, I was laughing because I could see everybody's, it didn't matter. But it really did make people come up with their own answers. And you couldn't go, oh, like I've read 5 of them and they're all thinking this. I was thinking this. I'm not going to answer something differently. You know, you have kids in your class that do that. They wait for other kids to answer and they just go along with the crowd, right? So using this discussion question and not allowing them to see until they've responded gives a lot more of an authentic response for these kids, as well as teachers. So let's go ahead and create this. And it looks like little speech bubbles. And I would do this all the time. This was what I heavily used as my, and I thought of them more as entrance tickets, my bell ringers. It was what the kids did when they walked into my class. I'd have a question posted. 90% of the time it had to do with what we had just learned or talked about or discussed the day before. And I wanted to see how much they retained. Shockingly, it also was typically some kind of a question that I knew I was going to be asking on the unit test or the chapter quick review, or it was a main concept that these kids like really needed to understand. You know, why did they write the Federalist Papers? Or, you know, but it was something that they should be able to concisely be able to spit back to me. Loved being able to do this with students. And then with the book study, I also loved being able to do this with teachers, because this is really where we got into a lot of really good back and forth between the buildings, between staff members at their own buildings. A lot of these spurred conversations that I had with individuals, as well as like various groups of people. It was really where I saw a lot of teachers like share some really good ideas and thoughts. So I would highly recommend using this. And I would make an analogy to, there we go, to the questions that you can post in Google Classroom. These are all just open-ended though. So keep that in mind. If you want to do like a multiple choice kind of, like on a scale of 1 to 5 or something, you're going to have to choose to make like a little test or an assessment and go that route. Questions so far? Silence. Jamie, this is where you can pop in and have your say. Just kidding. Just kidding. I will mute you. No, I'm just kidding. Now,
Can we end?
No, not yet, Jamie.
Oh,
Good
you said
grief.
I could ask a question.
Yes.
We don't want to hear it.
Thank you.
Hey, Sarah, I have a question.
Sure thing.
I think I missed this. When I just want to make sure, if I want to enable where they have to answer before they can see responses, is it the little yellow light colored or not colored? I can't, if I press on it, I forget. Does that, if it's colored, does that mean that's enabled? Or if it's not colored, it doesn't mean it's enabled?
Well, if it's grayed out, it's going to mean one thing. If it's in color, it's going to mean another thing. And the best way for you to understand is hover over it.
Okay.
So do you see how it's colored on my screen? It says that it's going to individually assign. It's not colored, so it's not individually assigned. It's green, so when I hover over it, it tells me that it's published to students.
Okay.
So if I uncheck it,
unpublished.
See how it changes that?
Yeah,
so this little guy's colored in. So when I hover over it, it's saying require members to post before revealing other responses.
I wanted to make sure because I want to make sure I was reading that correctly because I wasn't sure if it was saying push this to require it or it means it's, does that make sense? It's already required. I don't know.
But do you see how now he's gray and it changes the text? So just do your clicking and do your hovering.
Okay.
It really is that simple.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was comprehending that right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. And just like I just pulled up here too, if you want to change it, now keep in mind if kids have already responded and now you want to change it, those kids have already responded. So it's not going to change anything for the ones that already did it. So changing the settings is 100% possible. Just keep in mind that if somebody's already done that assignment, that question, that doc or whatever, it's going to change very little for them, but it might change for the kids that haven't done it yet. And then just make sure you do the save changes because it is not the automatic Google save. Now, something else that I do want to cover right now is, you see how I have these two activities kind of hanging out? They should be in folders because remember the idea here is keep this clean, straightforward, and simple for the kids. Like, what is this week? Here you go. Get these items into wherever they need to go, because if they're not, they're hanging out here, and that gives a whole different feel as long as you're consistent with keeping items in the folders. So you can drag and drop. It's not the easiest thing in the world, so you just have to really kind of pay attention. So I'm going to click and hold on it. And you see like the gray bar, you have to just kind of watch this closely. See how it jumped? Now it's above that folder, but that folder opened up. So I'm going to now, and you see like that gray bar is smaller. It's inside of there. If I want to put it in here, boom, I let go. It's there. The other thing you can do that might be a little bit more comfortable instead of the dragging and dropping is if you click on that gear wheel, you can also use this move option. And when you click move, it's going to ask like, where do you want it to go? Here's one of your folders. In February 22 to 26, I have a chapter 1 folder. I could tuck it in there. So it's going to show like these as those are my subfolders inside. And you just click say move and give it a second. And then when you click this little caret, it opens up. Come on, little buddy. Aren't you in there? Yeah. It opens up that folder and you can see the different assignments that are inside of, or the different items, I should say, that are inside of here. And this one's kind of grayed out. And I believe that is because it is unpublished to students at the moment. So use your visual cues really as your help, but you can also click on here and go right to that particular assignment, activity, whatever. Questions?
Sarah,
Yep,
I have one, please.
sure.
So if you move something and you lose it, is there a way to search for it to find it? Like you put it in the wrong place or you can't remember where you put it? If you have a lot of folders, is there a search bar?
There's not a search bar, but if you click on these little triangles or the carrots, I don't, whatever you call it, like you can see it's not taking up a tremendous, like it's not giving you like the full details of each one of these. It just gives you the title. So if you accidentally move it into the wrong spot, it should be easy enough to just open your folders.
Okay.
And this is where, again, I'll say it 1,000 times. Keep your organization super simple, a folder for each week, tuck items in there. If something carries over from one week to the next, just like what I just did, I can click on Plymouth Rock and I can move it up here into my March folder. You can drag them around, right? You don't have to go into edit and do all that and move and all this. You could also click on the gear wheel and do the move and move it. But it is a very nice method of being able to reorganize should you need it. Moving on, another item that you can do is adding a page, which if you look at the icon, that's what my Plymouth Rock activity is. It's simply just like a page of information. And what I did with this Plymouth Rock activity is they had to come here and they had to make their own copy of the information because they were doing this as a group. I didn't have it individually assigned, so I didn't use that the Google integration where you can make a copy for each kid. I wanted them to work as a group. So it's a page that has some information and then the link that takes them to the activity. So this page is really kind of like the materials that you might use in Google Classroom where you're just posting information. And sure, you can add in links, you can add in videos, you can add in resources, whatever. But that's what a page is. Very helpful. If you choose to do like a newsletter for your students for that week, a page might be how you want to do it. Obviously, if you got it on a Google Doc, inserting it as a link and calling it this week's newsletter, it serves the same purpose. There are two more things down here. I'm not gonna jump into the package because honestly, it was talking about SCORMs, grading. I don't know what SCORM is. I never use this, but this media album can be pretty cool. And I think it could be something that could be used. It really is, you're adding in multiple pictures. It's almost like you're adding in a photo album, if you can think of it that way. Again, give it a title, give it a description. My album. Put in whatever description you want, individually assign it, again, publish it, allow comments, allowing for students to add media into there. So if they're taking pictures of the cicadas that are in their backyard and you want them to be able to add it, you can allow them to. And then when you're ready to insert a file, you can add, let's see, insert that picture. I'm gonna say open. I can add in another one if I chose to. There we go. So I've got two files in there. I'm gonna add that. And then you see, like it's like your photo album if you want to. Might be something cool for a unit project, might be something for the whole year, you know, for art, music, gym, those other, the other contents that kind of go, well, but a lot of this stuff is more for the traditional classroom. Like this could be a really great way for students to share their artwork. It could be a really great way for students to share their physical activity that they do, you know, all that kind of stuff. This might be a really cool option, as well as, you know, I'm did my math work or something, and we want to have a collection of stuff that we've all done. This adding a media album might be a really cool way to do it. Questions on that part? All right, this is gonna be my last thing. And it's this options. You have 2 items in here. You can save your entire course to your resources, which you would do at the very, very end of the school year. And that just like saves all of this stuff. Keep in mind, and when it gets archived, you can always go in and access your archived courses just like you can with Google Classroom. But this student completion, and this is something I want to plant in your heads. Did not use this my first probably 2 years, but I jumped into it and I really found a lot of great value in it because it allowed my students to work through, if you're a fan of individually paced or student-led activities, you can build out, if you do this student completion, you can build out multiple activities in one area. And let's say they have to answer this question and they have to get, you can add in requirements. It could be a grading thing. It could just be a completion thing. It could be that they viewed it. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. I just want to plant this idea in your head because let's say they need to do activity 1 before they can even see activity 2. And then they complete activity 2, whatever that requirement is, to get them to activity 3. And I use this a lot of times to flow with my unit. And it was a way for them to work at their own pace and choose various activities. And they weren't always something that the entire class was going to do. This was kind of like your fast finishers, or maybe it was the way you set up an entire unit and you wanted students to be able to work through on their own. But you could make some requirements along the way. So this is just something I wanted to plant. I loved it. But again, like I said, I did not use this my first year. So keep that in mind. Just want to kind of plant that. And those of you that this kind of appeals, let me know and we can work through it. I can pull up one of my old classes and I can show you how I set things up. Some of the stuff was, it had to be submitted and I had to grade it. So it kind of locked them into a certain pace that they could go at. And I had students that absolutely adored this. And they would try to do as much, kind of gives you a little bit of gamification in your classroom if you want, built into Schoology. So with that, and looking at the time, I'm going to stop. We are not going to meet next week. If you have questions about Schoology, I do want to have one more session, but have it open to everybody in both elementaries to clean up Google Classroom at the very end of the year, clean up your calendar, your drive, and your actual Google Classrooms. That's really, really important moving into next year, that we get everything kind of cleaned up. And I promise it doesn't take long. And if you choose not to come, you choose not to come. But anyway, questions about Schoology? Concerns? Okay, I'm going to stop recording and stop sharing.